So as a massive fan of You, I was actually pretty apprehensive going into this 5th and final season, but I have to say, they wrapped it all up really, really well. And every single episode was super addictive, and I feel like the cliffhanger, I have to say, every single season of You, they end their episode in such a good way as you just immediately want to devour the next episode as they just end it in such a good way. And even though this season was all packaged up and released in one go, I do feel like you can kind of split it into two in a very similar way to how season 4 felt very much like two parts together. As the first part of season 5 you can say is very conventional in terms of all of the romance, the crazy stalking, the super unbelievable murders, whereas the second part, after that brilliant twist after episode 5, it really does start the undoing of Joe Goldberg. And speaking of the second part, we have to talk about their ending. So first of all, I have to say, I feel like the penultimate episode, episode 9, was just so good. And I actually feel like it was stronger than episode 10. I mean, episode 10 obviously concluded the whole series in such a good way, but I have to say, episode 9 was just action sequence after action sequence and was so jaw-dropping. So first of all, we see him trying to stalk Kate, but Kate is always one step ahead of him as he is unknowingly following a decoy and then gets trapped in his own cage. And that sequence where you see Kate, Nardia and Marianne all together talking to Joe was just so brilliant. And I love the term that Maddie coined, which was his mind magic, and you could see him trying to do that with all three women. And as Kate is now his main adversary, you can really see that their relationship is completely broken. But because of the fact that Kate is just so intelligent, I actually think she is a really good rival to him. And I have to say, Kate was so brilliant this season. And she truly did sacrifice herself to try and defeat Joe and to allow Nardia and Marianne to then live there happily ever after. But unfortunately, she just wasn't a match to Joe, and you're thinking that she has pretty much passed away after their altercation in the basement, but deep down you can see that there is still a bit of a connection between the two of them, and I loved how they were just reminiscing right at the end. And then speaking of confrontations, he is then coming up against Maddie, who he has always been more superior against, except in this final confrontation. She really does have the last laugh as she has trapped him in the basement and then has set his beloved bookstore on fire. And then with all of those flames in the background, it was so soap opera and over the top when he is then proposing to Bronte outside, and then you can begin to see that she is now going to be a co-narrator. So like I said, episode 9 was absolutely brilliant, but now let's talk about the actual final episode, episode 10. So it starts off with Bronte and Joe seeming like they're going to try and get there happily ever after. But thanks to Marianne really waking Bronte up, she now is on their side and is now wanting to truly get Joe done once and for all. I do feel like this whole episode kind of felt like an additional segment to the brilliant episode 9 in a very similar way to how Scream 4 had that additional hospital scene added right at the end. I absolutely love the backdrop of this somewhat abandoned house that they're squatting in complete seclusion, and there is of course a lake, which you just know there was so much foreshadowing of the lake potentially being the end of Bronte. And then she was able to do something with Joe that we've never really seen before. First of all, she was able to strip him in so many different ways, both physically and mentally, and this in addition to Henry saying that he is pretty much seeing Joe as a monster now and doesn't want to have anything to do with him, truly did get the animalistic qualities of Joe out front and center, especially the way in which he is just running around like an animal in that forest, and he is trying to kill Bronte on multiple different occasions and is even able to easily kill off a police officer. So he truly became an absolute unhinged beast right at the end. And Bronte shoots him in the private, so this really is the end of Joe Goldberg, especially as he is now sentenced and convicted for all of the murders, and then of course all of the other murders that not everybody knows about is now popping up. And in the final sequence you really see that he isn't able to still take full accountability, as he is still blaming other people for making him this way. And then we get to see what happens next with all of the main players in this season. So let's talk about all of the main beats in season 5. So first of all, I think it starts off in such a strong way and continues from the end of season 4. So Joe has really solidified himself as part of the Lockwood family, as he has had a successful marriage to Kate for 3 years and has lived a very happy, rich and and privileged life, but Uncle Bob is the beginning of the undoing, as Kate has stopped listening to him and is now wanting to do her own thing, which is so within her right as CEO, but Uncle Bob is not happy with this and now wants to get some incriminating dirt on her, and the confession that she made to Joe right at the end of season 4, which is why she was able to forgive the little bit of darkness that Joe had disclosed to her. And now Uncle Bob knows so much about their dark past and wants to use this to destroy her and remove her from the CEO role. And it really was the first domino effect in really turning Joe Goldberg into the ultimate beast, in terms of saying to him, fine, you can give into your dark side and you can kill Uncle Bob. And once this happened, Joe had fully gone back into the dark side and then did not really want to come back to the light side. But Joe and Kate aren't free yet, as then Reagan finds out everything that Uncle Bob knew and then even more info. I absolutely love the Reagan character. I feel like they made her a little bit one-dimensional though, as she was just this cookie-cutter villain, and she could have had so many more layers to her in a very similar way to how Maddie did. I'm glad that they at least gave Maddie more layers, but they could have done so much more with Reagan. And this also, unfortunately, is the thing that really divides Joe and Kate and really fractures their relationship, as of course they've got very different outlooks on how they should really solve their problems. And I say unfortunately, as I feel like in the first couple of episodes, Joe and Kate really were an unstoppable true power couple. And I really feel like out of all of the relationships that Joe has had, I really do think that Kate is the right partner for him, as she is such a strong, smart, powerful woman and isn't afraid of really speaking her mind to Joe, whilst Joe is really, really charming, really, really romantic. And I just feel like as a pair, they could, in another universe, potentially work. And then speaking of Reagan, I really love the confrontation of Joe versus Reagan. I feel like Reagan was a good competitor to Joe, as she was so relentless, and that fight across this massive, expensive mansion in the Hamptons I thought was actually really, really good, and reminded me a lot of the love finale that he had at the end of season 3, also thrown back to season 1, where he was running all over the place with Peaches, and then he brings Reagan into the den and really does play off the two twins against one another. They could have outsmarted him if they had just worked together as a pair, but he really put so many seeds of doubt into Maddie's mind, and then made her kill Reagan. Truly unbelievable, the mind magic that he was able to do with Maddie. I thought it was pretty unrealistic and uncharacter type in terms of Joe then randomly just wanting Harrison and Maddie to go to jail. I thought it was interesting, as an insurance policy, he kept the teeth of Reagan so twisted. But the reason that I think is unrealistic is it was done purely from a plot device point of view, as if they're in jail, they've got no reason to keep Joe's secrets. I feel like they could have done a little bit more with the twin dynamic, but I feel like as far as the first 5 episodes were concerned, they really did explore all of the Maddie stuff really well. I absolutely loved all of the multiple references back to back, as I feel like it went full circle back to season 1 in such a good way. First of all, they're obviously based in New York City this time, and retread so many locations that we originally fell in love with back in season 1, and having brand new scenes with Beck was just so good. And of course, she is obviously entwined into the relationship because she also knew Bronte back in the day. It's a shame they never filmed anything new with Love, but she was at least referenced on multiple occasions by Kate in terms of another marriage that Joe had before. And of course, Joe is putting so much of the blame of all of the murders on Love. One of the things that I love with season 4 and with season 5 is that there are so many big millionaire characters that you can see, but I feel like Joe could have and should have just done a little bit more in terms of the fact that he's got access to so much money. The Bronte twist in episode 5 that actually she has been masterminding this thing all along, as she knew back in the day, I thought was so unexpected and really did add so many more dimensions and layers to her, especially as she then wants to continue the romance with Joe, as she is in a very twisted way falling in love with him. But it really does show how much of a manipulator and how alluring Joe really is, as given all of these reasons why Bronte should want to completely destroy Joe, she is madly falling in love with him, as does so many other characters, and now you can kind of see why. And it was just so shocking the way that he was able to change all of the public's opinion of him, both on social media and then all of the fan mail that he is receiving in jail. I loved his line when he was saying he can't believe that social media which he used to find out so much information about all of his victims, is now one of the reasons for his downfall. So let's go through all of the characters now. So I have to say, Penn Badgley is just absolutely unbelievable as Joe Goldberg. I feel like in this season in particular, you got to see how even more unhinged he is, as well as also how romantic he is as well. In addition to that, you really are able to see how he is able to be so manipulative to so many different people, as he very quickly is able to figure out what people's weaknesses are and then just really exploit this for his own personal gain. So he really is the combination of being truly evil but also truly charming, and as a result of this is so destructive to the lives of multiple different people. I'm surprised that they didn't explore more of the characters from his past. So for example, his half-brother. I know that they explored a lot of his childhood trauma and tried to somewhat explain why and how he became the person that he is, but I do feel like they could have just brought back one or two people from Joe's actual past. Like I said before, I absolutely love the character of Kate. I feel like Charlotte Ritchie did such a good job bringing this character back from season 4, where she already was really, really good, but this time she has got so much more money, so much more power, so much more influence, and is also super smart, so is able to make really calculated decisions and also knows how Joe thinks, so is able to outsmart him on multiple different occasions. And I absolutely loved Joe's massive outburst when Kate was saying, look, it's all been arranged, as she has said that on multiple different occasions now. And this time when she is saying that, look, all of Henry's future has been arranged, his outburst at that I thought was unbelievable. I thought it was really sad when you're seeing that she's making this ultimate sacrifice for all of the other women to then have very successful futures. So it was really nice right in the final moments that she actually did survive. I think it's a little bit unrealistic, as we did kind of see her pass away. So it would have been good if they would have at least explained how she got out. I thought Bronte was really, really good. Very risky in terms of introducing someone brand new who is so pivotal and so important, especially in the final confrontations with Joe, and is also co-narrating the final episode alongside him. The reason that I think it worked is because I feel like they did the right thing in terms of interweaving her into the past with Beck, as this not only allowed everybody to go back to season 1, also explained how Joe brutally murdered Beck, which was always not only an unanswered question, but was a thread that people thought maybe Beck is still alive. But it could have been the case that people just did not care for Bronte / Louise and just wanted her off screen, which definitely happened on multiple occasions when they were trying to introduce characters in 13 Reasons Why. And even though I personally found her a little bit annoying across the season, I feel like the way in which they ended her storyline was actually really good. And then speaking of new characters, I absolutely love the fact that they did the twin trope and had one actress playing both parts. And Maddie is the good and neglected twin who, thanks to Joe's manipulation, ends up brutally murdering her own sister. I feel like Reagan could have been such an interesting and compelling character if they had allowed her to live a little bit more. And it's just such a shame that they made her so one-dimensional, as she could have very easily had so many more layers and complications to her. Although it was then going to be a big twist that it's actually been Reagan all along and that she is the one that killed off Maddie. But that never would have been able to happen, as Joe's got all of the footage and recording of what really happened while he was away from the den. I thought the character of Teddy was really, really good. He was always the word of wisdom and just wanted Kate to just give Joe into the authorities once and for all, but she knew that Joe would then try to tear her down, so she just wanted to do it in a way that wouldn't have been possible. And then speaking of Joe, I absolutely love that he also tried to do it with Teddy, in terms of being like, look, you're an outsider like me, and really wanted Teddy to be on his side and allow him to speak to Henry. I feel like Teddy's response to this, to Kate, to be like, look, you nearly put my life in jeopardy, I have now just had enough, was so believable, and you can really see where Teddy is coming from. I think it's such a shame that we didn't get Jenna Ortega's Ellie character back in season 5. She was so brilliant in season 2, and she is of course part of the Netflix family, filming Wednesday for them, so they could have easily just done something. And I also think the fans would have preferred it if some of the things that Bronte was doing was given to Ellie, given the fact that she is such a fan favorite character, as well as having her own driven motivation to wanting to see Joe Goldberg coming down once and for all, as her sister was murdered because of the interactions with Joe. I mean, technically, I know it was Love Quinn who did that, but still, none of all of the chaos that happened in season 2 would have happened if Joe wasn't in the picture. She at least had kind kind of a character presence in terms of giving some money and being the sponsor of these kids so that they can at least get Joe to face justice, but still it was just such an injustice that Jenna Ortega wasn't here. That being said though, I'm so glad with all of the other characters that they were able to bring back. For example, Lady Phoebe, Nardia, Marianne, all of them were really contributing so much more to the plot, as well as having all of the secondary background characters also making some cameo appearances on social media, on TikTok, when everybody around the world is finding out the truth about Joe. So, you know, overall, I have to say, season 5 was really, really good. I feel like not only was it really great from a standalone perspective, I feel like it also completed and concluded everything from the show's point of view in such a good way. And as we did see in the final montage, not only is Joe finally being sentenced for all of the crimes that he is doing, all of the other murders are now getting revealed, so everybody is now able to know the true full extent of what Joe Goldberg was able to do across these 5 seasons. And he trapped so many people in the cage, and now he is trapped in a cage all on his own, which is true poetic justice. So I have to give you season 5 a mega 8 out of 10. Now I'd love to hear from you. What did you think of You season 5? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.